This episode commences today at the Citadel of Sank, where rumor has it that the talks appear to be flourishing. Mario remarks that matters were somewhat precarious initially, but ultimately they proved fruitful. RS states that they have seized Lord Loba's spouse as a captive. She will be executed if he capitulates or deceives them. Nevertheless, he will never encounter his offspring if he perishes in combat. It's an agonizing predicament for him, so they extended him an opportunity to preserve his wife and see his child due to his newfound assessment aptitudes. I comprehended what had been plaguing him. I desired to assist after they grasped the circumstances. Mario exclaims, "I'm astonished you granted him a chance to liberate the hostage. What was your rationale?" RS replies, stating that he trusted they would contemplate it jointly, but they become agitated when they discern that he lacks a scheme. In that instant, a gentleman named Clayman appears, bearing numerous warriors on his shoulders and hurls them down. He declares their troops are excessively seasoned. Ours starts to identify Metro techniques and inquires who this individual is. They recognize he is Clement, the chief of the Metro unit. They mention that Metro is a hired combat group renowned for never botching any assignment they're allocated, and they've learned that their expertise is in great request throughout the realm. Clement then questions, "Who is this youngster?" Ours answers, "I dispatched Love in from the Lamberg territory, and I appreciate you aligning with us." But Clayman counters, "Don't misinterpret. I'm laboring for the compensation, not for your faction." Ritz becomes indignant and retorts, "How audacious of you to address our lord in such a manner." Clement rejoins, "So you're Ritz, the one directing the legions. It's commendable that there's intimate camaraderie amongst your men, but they're all gullible when it comes to genuine warfare. None of them are genuinely braced to expire. Have you ever confronted the prospect of utter obliteration? It appears you have a gifted tactician to circumvent total demolition. You can constantly withdraw or yield, but that's dissimilar from mercenaries. We contend until the final man if instructed. We exist adjacent to death daily. We are a cohort perpetually on the precipice between existence and demise. So this is Metro Squad. Permit us to manage your perilous undertaking. You'll acquire labor valued beyond currency. The child can remain in the back lines." Then Ars's companion interjects, stating, "Don't be hostile, Clement. Ours may be youthful, but he's accomplished commendable labor as a commander. Now let's initiate the conference regarding liberating the captives." The captives are the relatives of the chiefs progressing towards Castle Rolto, encompassing Lord Loba's wife. They are confined somewhere within the stronghold, but the precise position is obscure. Ours inquires, "Can we request the shadow operatives to extricate them?" Mario replies, "Reconnoiters have indicated that there are over 10,000 troops in Castle Rolto. Perhaps the shadows could slip in and out unaccompanied, but if they extract the captives with them, it's unachievable. The Citadel is teeming with warriors." They deliberate enticing the troops out of the castle, but with 10,000 soldiers, it won't be simple. Their forces are practically equivalent, but the defenders invariably possess the upper hand when it comes to a blockade. They contemplate if winter will render the invasion of Verzade even more arduous if they delay excessively. Mario proposes, "We must engineer a scenario that will entice all the soldiers outside Castle Rolto, then we'll liberate the captives and assail the castle." This is a remarkably challenging endeavor, and they inquire of Russell, who seems to be occupied formulating the strategy. He states, "I believe this might function," and it seems he's devised a resolution. So the setting transfers to Castle Rolto, where a sentinel arrives and reports, it appears that Lomir of Canary dispatched an emissary to Fortress Vardison. They likely proposed a surrender, but Loba rebuffed them. The Canary Legion is presently in a deadlock with the fortress. Lord Jan, who governs Castle Rolto, states, since they haven't engaged yet, it seems he permitted the emissary to depart. That if this stalemate persists, winter will shortly arrive, and we will undoubtedly prevail. General Dan inquires, "Are you content now?" But Dan replies, "I dislike waiting." Then they receive a dispatch from Loba, tainted with blood, which reads, "The adversary numbers approximately 10,000. Lord Jan, we aspire for a swift engagement. They are utilizing a potent mage and dispatching 5,000 troops commanded by their general to assault Castle Rolto." They are startled, questioning if the foe will genuinely assail them. The enemy is observing intently, and conveying this message to them wasn't effortless. They hope Lord Jan receives this caution from Loba of Fortress Far to Sin. The trooper says he discovered the message with an injured warrior from Fortress Far to Sin who had collapsed at the gate. The adversary must have pursued him while he was delivering it. The king asks, "Is this truly Loba's handwriting?" And the soldier affirms, "Yes." Scrutiny of the penmanship corroborated it. The potent mage must be the female who penetrated the Focamacro Fortress barrier unassisted. The king then declares, "Even if we secure this location, they can still storm it with only 5,000 men. If that occurs, let's engage them on the battlefield." Mages are problematic, but close quarters combat isn't their forte, so they struggle sustaining their magical reserves. He asks Dan if he can manage the situation, to which Dan responds, "My knights execute better in open combat. Naturally, I'll bring you the head of their commander." Next, the setting shifts to Fortress Fardosin, where Loba informs Ars, "I've dispatched the message to Castle Rolto as you requested. The message, and the soldier conveying it, was stained with blood. I've notified the other fortresses of the scheme and directed their forces not to intercede." Ars expresses gratitude and says, "Let's proceed to the battlefield." Loba declines, stating, "If I participate in the fight, you will know I betrayed Castle Rolto. Please remain here until the operation is concluded." Ars replies, "Castle Rolto has seasoned knights. You won't have a prospect with only 5,000 men. But if we're defeated, continue battling as part of the Lord's forces as you have been. If we triumph, I trust you'll unite with us." He then presents Loba a device and says, "I'll exert my utmost to save your spouse. Please await my return." In Castle Sank, Russell clarifies the strategy. "We will dispatch 5,000 men to lure the adversary. We'll feign a withdrawal after encountering their 5,000 soldiers, concealing ourselves in the woods, and then strike them with all our force. Concurrently, when Castle Rolto is unoccupied, shadow soldiers will infiltrate and extricate the captives." However, they voice apprehensions. "One aspect troubles me. Simulating a retreat entails eluding enemy assaults and remaining safe while fleeing. It's more complicated than it appears, especially with forces double our size. They could annihilate us before we even manage to escape." The leader of the Metro unit interjects, stating, "Metro's squad will furnish concealment." Russell responds, "I cannot permit that. Our adversaries will only emerge to confront our primary forces commanded by our commander. We cannot allow them to believe we're a detached group." Mary adds, "All right, I comprehend that signifies the perilous camouflage role will fall to both Ars and Lemire." So the setting then progresses to the battlefield, where Ars addresses his troops. This engagement will be harsher than any we've encountered previously, but to attain victory and bring tranquility to Misian, we must overcome this battle. I have faith in your capabilities." He commands everyone to attack, and the battle initiates. We observe one of the enemy warriors, Dan, fighting adeptly, and Ars wonders who is this individual. Utilizing his appraisal sorcery, Ars perceives that this individual possesses extraordinary attributes, exceeding Ritz's. When he surveys the remaining enemy combatants, he recognizes that all of them possess high attributes, realizing this battle will be considerably more arduous. Approximately half of the enemy's forces are knights. Ritz instructs their soldiers to form formations that prevent unguarded spots, as the enemy knights will utilize their velocity to attack from every direction. The scene shifts to Castle Rhoda, where the women, confined within, hear noises from outside and ask what's going on. A guard enters and tells them they are being moved because the battle with the Quran army has started. Suddenly, Pham appears behind the guard, knocks him out, and says to the women, "I'm here to free you and take you back to your families. Stay calm." On the battlefield, Ars tells Lumir, "It's time to put the plan into motion." Lumir orders a retreat. Meanwhile, General Dan commands his troops to chase Ars's army into the forest to wipe them out. Lord Jan realizes the retreat is a tactic, and upon seeing the expressions of Ars's soldiers, he confirms it. These are not the faces of men fleeing. They're plotting something else. He orders General Dan to surround them and split their forces. While executing the plan, one of Dan's soldiers asks, "Are you sure about leaving the leadership to Lord Jan? He doesn't seem like a warrior." Dan replies, Lord Jan is more dangerous than I am. We grew up in a cavalry commander's house, attacking villages without mercy, killing women and children. Even the king of Missian feared us. There was a bounty for anyone who brought the head of Jan's father to the king. Jan killed his father and brought the head to the king, who made him a noble. Back in the present, Lomir asks, "Are we being pursued by the enemy?" He notices the enemy forces closing in. Ritz calls out to RS, urging him to stay calm and regain control while holding off the attackers. At this moment, Jan arrives and tells RS he won't let him win. He asks, "What are you trying to accomplish?" "It's obvious you're pretending to retreat. This is too obvious," as he begins taking down soldiers and horses. Charlotte converses with Ritz, urging him to seek out Ars, stating they must halt these individuals. Ritz departs, leaving her behind, and sets off to locate Ars. Meanwhile, Ars is being assaulted by enemy warriors, but is rescued by one of his men, who urges him to flee swiftly. Ars runs, and from a distance, Clement and his soldiers observe the predicament. He sees that the army is beginning to disperse and instructs his men to prepare, as Ars will likely request their assistance shortly. Back with Russell and Mary, Russell explains that a third of their troops are incapacitated, and the battle plan is already collapsing. So the scene returns to Ars, where Lomir informs him that it's no longer just a pretense, and if matters continue in this fashion, they could be obliterated entirely. They need to request Clement's assistance immediately. However, RS refuses, insisting that Lomir continue to adhere to the strategy. Lomir is exasperated and asks him to observe their surroundings. They will be vanquished before they even arrive at the forest. RS responds that even if they request reinforcements, they're confronting a proficient foe on the battlefield, and the odds are still against them. As long as even one individual believes they can prevail, Ars doesn't desire to surrender. He tells everyone the situation is dire, but if they can overcome this, victory will be theirs, and asks Lomir, "Are you prepared to trust me and my men? If so, permit me to complete my strategy." The soldiers rally behind Ars, emboldened by his words. Clement is perplexed by the circumstances, as Ars's troops continue to fight without his support. However, the foe abruptly disappears, and no one knows where they went. Just then, Dan and his soldiers assault from the mountain, aiming to eliminate Ars, but Ritz intervenes at the last moment, rescuing him. RS expresses gratitude to Ritz for his aid, but at that instant, Dan and his men charge towards them again, so Ritz manages to wound Dan's hand. RS reflects, thinking Ritz's arrival has significantly elevated their morale, so they've nearly attained the forest, but the enemy is before them. Russell exclaims, "The enemies are everywhere. There's no way out," sparking panic among the troops. Ars, deeply worried, wonders, "Is this the end?" Suddenly, Loba arrives, announcing that he's come to assist them. The soldiers cheer at his arrival. Loba states, "This knight from the enemy army claims I betrayed you by temporarily retreating to regroup, but I won't come back empty-handed." Just then, an arrow strikes Loba in the back, and he collapses. Sars rushes to him, asking if he's all right. Loba assures him it's just a minor wound. Lomir, relieved, says, "If you hadn't shown up, we wouldn't have been able to do anything." However, Ars is furious and asks, "Why did you come? We were on the verge of defeat, and now it's clear you betrayed us and chose your own way." Loba replies, "This is exactly what's happening in Duke Missian's territory during this war. The crisis forces people to become narrow-minded and lose focus on others. But when I saw your dedication to saving your spouse, I couldn't just stand by. Maybe it's a foolish choice that could cost me everything, but I don't regret it. Do you remember what you told me during our negotiation? You said you trusted me to help you. I'm a knight and a commander, and that's an honor that can't be replaced." Ars thanks Loba for coming and for placing his trust in him, saying, "We have to win this battle." Meanwhile, another knight uses sound magic to issue orders to the troops in the city. He declares that Loba has betrayed them and commands that the prisoners be executed. The prisoners begin to escape, emerging from their confinement one by one. When the sentinels notice, the knight orders, "Seal the exits. There may be infiltrators." It's Lord Dan's command. Once the captives are caught, execute them.